Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Marina Byezhanova. Hi, Marina.
Hi, Adi. How are you?
Doing very well. I am so excited to have you as a guest. I was looking forward to recording this interview because we're going to talk all about personal branding today. And that is a subject I'm super curious about. And I'm going to ask you a question. So we're going to basically, what I would love to do is to develop some kind of a process on how to actually develop your personal branding.
I'm so excited to be speaking with you today, because I love your energy. I love your personality. I also love your business and what you do, because I truly believe that for anything to scale, processes and systems it's the core. It's what makes a business grow. So excited to share, excited to learn as well.
Great. And first of all, I need to introduce you so our listeners really know who we are talking to. So you are a super successful entrepreneur. You live in Canada, and you are a speaker, an entrepreneur, author, personal branding expert, and just like an amazing, amazing person. So give us a little bit of your background and how did you come to be that expert in personal branding?
Look, I believe that personal branding is just a tool. A lot of people because it's become a bit of a buzzified tool these days. And so a lot of people are developing a bit of a resistance, and personal branding, it's not for me. Really, it's just a tool for us to have a clear understanding of who we are. And then how do we communicate it in a very clear way to the external world? How do we market ourselves so that our name has some equity in it? So my story takes roots, and my passion for this idea of having a voice and standing out and putting ourselves out there comes really from my childhood. I was born in, at that time, the Soviet Union, where there was no voice. There was no possibility of standing out. We all had to blend in. All the kids had to wear gray and black and maybe white, but there was no color. There was no way of standing out. There was no voice. When I grew up, it was post-Soviet Ukraine, so still very different from Ukraine that we have today. And then I came to Canada and I said, oh my God, this is democracy. I can finally have a voice. I can stand out. And then I realized that when you come from another country and your language is not amazing, and you are a teenager, you don't want to stand out, you want to blend in. And then you don't necessarily have a voice because people don't have a lot of patience for you. So throughout the years, I worked really hard on claiming my voice, understanding, well, who am I? What is it that I bring to the world? So without giving it a name of what is my brand, that sounds very conceited to many people, but who am I? What do I bring to the world? How do I express it? It became a big passion of mine, which over the years, after building another business, trying a second business, brought me to the creation of Brand of a Leader, which is my personal branding agency.
Wow. Excellent. So, you have the mission of getting people to stand, entrepreneurs specifically, right? To actually stand out, have their own voice, be authentic, and be able to communicate that.
Absolutely. Gen X entrepreneurs.
Gen X entrepreneurs. Do you feel like, why did you choose Gen X? I mean, what do you feel? Do you feel that they need more help, or they're not really know how to make their voice heard? I mean, what made you choose Gen X?
So twofold. The first reason is that, yes, I find that Gen X entrepreneurs, so those are those of us who are mid 40s plus, have a harder time with not necessarily, maybe to an extent, figuring out their brand, but also then marketing that brand, right? We didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with this idea of putting ourselves out there on display and, being vulnerable in public. Those things are all very new. So yes, there's a lot more opportunity there to help out and make an impact. But the second reason, which maybe was the first reason, was purely selfish. We find it incredibly inspiring to work with entrepreneurs who are more advanced in their entrepreneurial journey. There's that richness in self-understanding and self-awareness, which is key to personal brand building. And there's such a richness of stories and, those battle stories that come from building a business, and then also stories of success. So really, it's also an inspiring, no offense to younger generations, but it's a more inspiring group of entrepreneurs for us to be focusing on.
Absolutely. So how do you define the Gen X? What years of birth would that be, or what age group?
So it's 43 years of age plus. And I don't know where it caps. We love working with baby boomers as well, but we don't have that many clients for baby boomers, or that many clients, but that many people in general in that demographic who are interested in building a personal brand. But when we do, that fits as well, because then there's even more richness and self-awareness, which again is very important for personal branding. And of course, the stories are remarkable. We get to work with people who inspire us every single day, which is what can be better than that when you're building a business.
Absolutely. So what makes a person, an entrepreneur that in about that age bracket, to come to you? Like what are some of the pain points, or what are some of the things that they want to improve? And they said, okay, I'm going to call Marina.
A couple of reasons. One, it's that feeling of, well, I've been hiding behind my business, but I have a lot more impact I can be making if I'm in the front of the business, either to bring more clients to the business through the visibility of the founder CEO, to attract A-player employees, to make an impact that's wider than the usual circle of influence. So that is one. Feeling, what, I do have stories to tell. I do have a voice. I can have that impact. So how do I do that? That's number one. Number two, we work with a lot of people who come to us in the moment of transition. They're pivoting in their entrepreneurial journey, either because they have a very strong team in place and they're not as needed and required in the business itself. They're working more on the business than in the business, or they exit it. And then they're saying, okay, well, if I am not fully immersed in that business, and that is my identity, if that's no longer the case, then who am I? What's my identity? How do I stay relevant? We have a lot of people saying huge exits, massively successful. And then 6 months later, they say, I'm not relevant anymore. Who am I? What do I bring to the table? And we get to uncover that together.
That's great. So what are the key components of a personal brand?
So there are three main things. Number one, a unique positioning. There needs to be an angle. And so if you're thinking from the corporate branding standpoint, that's very clear, right? When we're building a business, there needs to be an angle. When we're building a personal brand, same thing, there needs to be an angle. Now, quickly, a lot of people say, ooh, you said the word unique. I don't know if there's anything unique about me. Yes, there is. The idea is to uncover something that's the essence of you, the core of you, something really, really deeply you. And then what's unique is how we express it and how we position it through the, marketing lingo, use of words. And then that becomes your positioning. We also call it the modern version of the elevator pitch, right? So that whole, like if you were stuck in the elevator with somebody for 2 minutes, what would you say? That's a little bit outdated. But if you have something that's punchy, boom, right away communicates the essence of you, then there's a lot of equity, a lot of value in that. So number one, unique positioning. Number two, associations, consistent associations that your name evokes in people's minds. A lot of people will say, well, if I'm being radically authentic, which is one of our main things, then well, those are the associations I'm eliciting in people's minds. But then that's not a brand. For a brand to be a brand, those associations need to be consistent, right? Again, we can apply that to corporate branding. And if you think of any well-known corporate brand, you'll say the name and we all have the same associations. That's what makes it a brand. We want to achieve the same in personal branding. And so how do we achieve that? It's through very consistent, then marketing of our personal brand. So those are the three components. We figure out the angle. We figure out what we want those associations to be. How do we want to be described? What topics are we associated with? And then consistency of marketing of the brand to then build that visibility. Those are the three components.
Interesting. So can you give me some examples or tell us some stories of clients where they came to you, they did not have a well-defined personal brand, and examples of what you did and what was the final outcome?
Of course. So one thing to understand is that you can brand any component of you or your life journey, entrepreneurial journey, or personal journey. So step number one is going through all of those things that define you and who you are. Really, personal brand building, it's a journey and introspection. It's not external research and then boom, here's a gap in the market. We go with our clients very deeply into understanding who they are from their whole life journey, from their childhood, from as early as they remember, to discussing their core values, to see what we pick up on their personality. We look at all those different things. And then for different clients, we can build a brand around a different thing. Okay, so then it's also a matter of choice, because again, we're all complex individuals. So many angles of ourselves can be branded, and then it's a matter of choice. So far, we have branded people's why, their mission in life. We've branded people's built a brand around a client's core value. We've built brands around personality. So it just looking at what is dominant. And I'll give you an example in a moment. The one thing that we don't do is we do not build a brand around what the person does. We really build the brand around who the person is. So if, for example, we're working with you, Adi, and you said, my biggest passion is systems and processes and helping businesses scale through that, that's amazing. That would be one of your talking points of your personal brand, but we wouldn't build your brand around it. And sometimes it causes frustration for clients because they say, well, that's my only focus. That's all I'm doing. Of course. But will you be doing it 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? Maybe, but maybe not. The brand has to have portability. So I'll give you a couple of fun stories and examples. Number one, we worked with an EO member in Canada who, as we were going through the process of discovery with her, we realized there were so many remarkable things about her, so many things we could have built the brand around. But what really stood out was her personality. She is the most over-the-top person in pretty much every way that you can imagine. And so we decided that we would work with that. Her brand positioning became one level extra. And what's incredible, so then we built everything around it, but one level extra became her thing. Within a couple of months, we started noticing that people who would write a post on social media or post a picture on Instagram would tag her and would put hashtag one level extra. We then noticed months later that people would start using it in sentences. Kate, thank you so much for the one level extra event you put together. So they started putting, so you could see when it's so authentic, when it's radically authentic, it really, really sticks with people. I'll give you another very quick story. We've worked with a client who had a really compelling life journey. She was abandoned when she was 3 years old. She was born in South Korea, abandoned at the age of 3 with a little bag and a note that said, "Don't look for us." She was picked up by an orphanage. And a year later, she was adopted by a Canadian family. But it wasn't a good adoption. So that's not the, kind of the happy end of that story. It was a fairly rough adoption. She had to move out fairly young and start building life on her own, could not go to university, could not, pursue education, had to work. But fast forward, she became a really successful interior designer, built a very successful interior design business, was also an EO member, and now is building the largest community of interior designers in North America. So she stopped. And so when she told the story to me, I remember meeting her, I kept saying, you need to tell the story to the world of how anything is possible, and there's a lot more complexity to the story. Anything is possible. She said, oh, but what's the purpose of that? Who cares? Everybody has a story. And so when we finally started together, there's a few things that we uncovered, because the question was, well, she never lived in beautiful interiors. She never studied interior design. How is she so passionate about it and so successful? And so one of the things that she uncovered in that journey is that the reason behind her passion was that she was giving people through her work, which she never had, a sense of a home. She always had a house, a roof over her head, with the exception of those couple of hours on the streets when she was 3. But she didn't have that sense of a home. And so she helps people turn houses into homes. And so positioning that we developed for her is this concept of interiority, inner spaces of inner feelings, inner life of spaces and places. And then that became her thing and it's become a big thing. And now she's in talks for her own TV series, all around this concept of interiority. She's looking at writing a book on interiority. And so that gave her a purpose to tell her story with a mission of inspiring people to find their own interiority. So I could go on and on and on because
Marina, I just have to stop you here because this is amazing. You know what I got as you were telling the stories? I really got the connection with those two ladies, although I don't know them, but I feel like I got this connection with them, right? So it's not just an interior design firm, but I go, wow, okay, so now it connects you with a person, right? It connects you with who the person is. Like, Kate, I don't know her, but now I go, oh, okay, yeah, it's everything going to be over the top, right? And you have that connection. So am I right that that's what a personal brand will do? It will just get you that instant connection with the person and create more credibility, more affinity for that person, more willingness to communicate and to do business or to have interaction with that person.
Absolutely, all of the above. And that's why we designed a very clear process of extracting all of that information to then be able to get to the essence of the person and build something around to serve all of those purposes that you just described.
Wow. That's incredible. So now we understand the three main components. What I like to do, and I'm sure you heard it in other episodes that I've done, I like to extract the process out of a person. I mean, of course, not your secret sauce, but let's say we have listeners right now that are going, okay, I want to figure out my personal brand today. Obviously, they should call you and work with you. But let's say they want to do it yourself. What advice, what are the steps that they should take in order to figure out what is their personal brand? What's the first step that you do?
Of course. So happy to share it completely transparently. Our secret sauce lies in not only the process itself, which has been our secret sauce to scaling the business. A lot of people have come to us and said, I could sense right away from your website, from the original discovery call, that you are very structured and you have a clear process in place. And that's what I'm looking for. So something that we pride ourselves in. But our secret sauce for scaling the business has been that. But what we bring to clients is we hold up the mirror and we're able to see blind spots, which is very hard to do on your own. So my first recommendation is if you are looking to uncover, because step number one is understanding, well, what is your brand, right? So answering that question becomes really important. And again, not my brand is I'm an entrepreneur that owns the business. No. Inside you, what's your brand? So uncovering that is really hard. They'll give exact steps to take. It's very hard to do on your own. I'm not saying you need to work with a personal branding agency, but you want to work with somebody. It can be somebody you know, not somebody you know too well. People we know too well don't leave us much room to self-discover. They feel they know everything about us and they kind of impose that. But somebody that is willing to spend that time with you. So step number one that we take with clients, we have a series of 3 calls where we take them through a series of questions that we ask, and then we do those deep dives. Number 1 is Lifeline. Those of us in EO are familiar with that. You take.
So that's for our we mentioned it several times, and I was going to say, so for our listeners that don't know what EO is, you should check it out. It's Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a fantastic organization that of entrepreneurs and a lot of support, a lot of knowledge, a lot of education, and you can go and check it out. And both Marina and I are part of that organization, and many others of the past people on the past episodes were with EO members. And one of them, by the way, Marina, before we continue with that, we should give right now a shout out to Joe Frost, who introduced us and connected us. So definitely thank you for that. And okay, so now we cleared that up. So let's continue.
Of course. And Joe is also a client of Brand of a Leader. We did his personal brand as well, and loved working with him and uncovering all that he had to offer. So step number 1 is the Lifeline exercise. Entrepreneurs Organization members are familiar with it. Those who are not, very simple. You take a sheet of paper as big as possible, put it vertically, and write a line in the middle, draw a line in the middle, and then start mapping out all of the most significant moments in your life. The highs and the lows from as early as you can remember. So if you remember yourself at 2 years old, start there. Remember yourself at 8, start there. The highs and the lows. Don't limit yourself to the highs and the lows that you feel are what society tells us they are. It could be a comment somebody said to you and it really stuck with you when you were 4. Significant to you at that moment in life. You map it all out. It takes a long time to do. And then you look for common denominators and patterns. That's step number one. What keeps emerging for you? What keeps coming up? When I did that exercise, for me, it was voice. Having a voice, not having a voice. Having a voice, not having a voice. That was one of the main patterns. You then want to write out all those patterns to see, well, what could be a compelling one to build potentially your brand around. So that's number one. That's call number one that we have with clients. Call number two, we continue digging deep. Exercise number one, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want to be described? Your brand descriptors. You write a list of 3 to 5 adjectives, not more, of how you want people to describe you when you are putting yourself out there. And then 3 to 5 of how you don't want people to describe you. And not antonyms, because those are implied. So you could say, I want to be described as opinionated, but I don't want to be described as intolerant or closed-minded. Okay, so not antonyms, but something that could be the shadow of that. Then that's exercise 1A there. And then there's also 1B. 1B is validating it. What we ask our clients to do is to send a text message or an email to as many people as they can think of and ask them, what are the 3 or 5 adjectives you would use to describe me? You want to get the real truth, you make it anonymous, and then it's not a purely feel-good exercise, you'll get some zingers as well. And then you compare the list, and then that is one of the things that you settle on, because as I mentioned before, that perception is very important in personal brand building. Another thing that we talk about on that second call is core values. What are your core values? And for my fellow entrepreneurs, don't cheat and just write out the core values of your business. Core values of our businesses, of course, are our core values. But I challenge you to think of any other core values that you have that are not in the business, but that are still yours. And you want to write those down as well. Exercise number 3, influencers and leaders. Who are the people that you follow, people that you pay attention to, people whose style of influencing appeals to you? The reason we do that exercise is to look at typically what we like about the style of influencing of others is indicative of how we would want to show up as well, how we would want to influence. So that's call number 2 that we have with clients. That's what we do there. That's what you can do on your own. Call number 3 is all about marketing the brand. So now we're going to be looking at, well, who's my core audience or my core audiences? And here's another part of the process and another trick that we recommend. Don't only think of an audience that carries a transactional benefit to you. So if you're building your personal brand because you want to attract more clients, then that will be audience number 1. You want to attract A players, audience number 1. You want to so a transactional benefit. Think of an audience that doesn't carry a transactional benefit. Maybe it's the younger you. People who fall in that category, people that you would want to inspire, that you want to pay it forward to, that you want to give hope to, a completely different category. The reason you do that is when we self-promote, it can sometimes feel uncomfortable or even icky. But when we are putting ourselves out there and sharing for other reasons, in addition to self-promoting and transactional benefit, it makes us feel more inspired to build a presence and a personal brand. So core audience. After that, on that same third call, we're continuing with the topic of marketing, how we're going to market our brand. The question is, what is going to be the type of format I'm going to be creating? Am I comfortable with the written word? Am I somebody who likes audio? Am I comfortable with video? Then that dictates the platforms. Are you going to be marketing your brand on social media? You're going to be writing a book? Are you going to launch a podcast like Addie and connect with people that way? Do you want to guest on people's podcasts? The format that speaks the most to you, that's what the platform, that's what you choose. And then finally, and very important, the bane of everyone's existence, what are you going to be talking about? Up to 3 topics maximum, 1 to 2 topics that establish credibility, 1 topic that humanizes your credibility, that has nothing to do with what you do, but has everything to do with who you are. That becomes really important as well. So that is the process. That is what we do with clients. Then my team goes, puts it all together to create a roadmap and a plan moving forward and the brand guide. And of course, we create something punchy and exciting like Joe's decentralized leadership concept or Kate's 1 level extra or Sana's interiority. That marketing spin, of course, helps quite a bit.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Joe for a second, because I know him very well. You do as well. And our listeners can go back to the episode where I interviewed him and he interviewed me. So the decentralized leadership, that is also the concept of his business, right? Because he has your CMO. But you somehow separated his own personality from the business, right? Because we're not talking about fractional CMO, we are talking about what he brings in terms of that concept, in terms of that leadership, in terms of that idea, right?
Exactly. So when we started working with Joe, one of the things, again, we observed a lot of patterns. One of the things that we observed is that he is the most all over the place and the most wonderful way person you could meet, meaning his educational background, right? So like, I think the chemistry, but now as an entrepreneur has nothing to do with that. You look at his businesses, it's also very diverse. And when you look at his business journey, the way he thinks, all of these different ideas. So we came up with this idea of decentralized entrepreneur. He's a decentralized entrepreneur. There's not that, kind of a one niche zoned and focused. It's very decentralized. So we came up with that idea for him that he's a decentralized entrepreneur. And then we adapted it to the business as well. So often we'll do that for some of the clients where it's relevant. So for him, then he started talking about the concept of decentralization in general, decentralized leadership, and then applied it to the business as well. Because the concept of fractional leadership, the trend is extremely compelling and it's becoming the future of work without doubt. But the word fractional does not carry much emotional excitement and appeal. Fractional, fractured, broken. And so we took the concept that we developed for Joe and then applied it to his business and the concepts that he talks about, which is decentralized leadership, decentralized work structures, and so on.
Fantastic. And again, it creates that emotional connection. It's really interesting how it happens, right? Instead of just thinking about a business or something that doesn't have the human element, it really creates some kind of a humanity connection, emotion, so then we want to know more and it makes it more interesting. So that's incredible. I love what you do. It's very inspiring and very needed. And it brings volume and color and excitement to something that can be boring or mundane, right? Or conservative. So you really put a color on it, like you were mentioning at the beginning.
Very much so. Two things our clients tell us all the time is one, how did you guys get to know me so well in such a short period of time? So that's one of the things where like almost we get a face like that, be like, whoa, you really got to know me. But then number two is, oh my God, you took everything that's inside me and in my head and just expressed it in such a clear way. And so we see that almost like that relief of this is all inside. So people will say like, like you didn't invent anything though. It's all inside me. But somehow now it's expressed in a way that, as you said, is compelling, is interesting to other people. And it brings that clarity and connection. So we are very fortunate to do the work that we do. And Adi, never boring, because, when you incorporate branding and let's say you get to work, I don't know, some businesses are more dry than others, right? Then you have to find something compelling there. And it's hard. Like somebody has a factory with, I don't know, industrial widgets. It's hard to build a brand around that. But people we work with, Gen X entrepreneurs, like kick-ass, incredible people, there's always something compelling. So even those who come to us and they're super introverted, we work with a lot of introverts because they're the ones that will struggle with finding a way to market themselves. But when they come to us and they can be super dry and a few words and we have to dig really deep, but inside there is that wealth of interesting, compelling stuff that we get to extract, put together, and then help them at scale, show it to the world, which is really inspiring for us.
That's beautiful. Just beautiful, Marina. Well, you mentioned something I have to get back to, which is your systems in your business. And, I'm all about systems and processes and I love it. And you mentioned that that's what allowed you to scale. So if you can summarize why systems are important, and especially coming from somebody who's so creative like you, that you could have gone, oh no, I don't want to be restricted and I don't want systems. But why systems? Why systematizing the business is so important?
I think it's everything. And considering that this is not my first business, when we co-founded Brand of a Leader with my partner, my business partner, we're really focused on from the get-go, trying to create, and at the beginning, it's hard to create systems and processes because you're still figuring out what the process is, right? But that was our commitment from the beginning. That was our mindset. And look, Brand of a Leader is just over 2 years old, and we have huge global reach. We have employees that are across the globe. We're scaling much faster than any of my previous businesses. And I'm certain that this is why it's systems and processes. Why? Because then everything is replicable, right? So when we first started the process, it was hinging the first piece on me. I would have those calls with clients, those deep dives, the 3 calls that I described, and I would be writing down the information and then, passing it on to my business partner, and he would put it all together. And it was all, kind of based on intuition and figuring it out. As soon as we created a process that I described to you, right? Those are the 3 calls. This is what we discussed. It's backed up with our learning management platform. So there's an automation piece as well. I was able to start training other brand guides. So it didn't have to be me anymore, because when it's only me, there's only that time in the day, right? We saw how hard it was for us to schedule our podcast interview between your schedule and my schedule, right? So then how do you scale if you're the bottleneck in your own business? Once that process was standardized, well, now we started hiring brand guides that just take clients through the process. It works because it's not hinged on me and the conversation I will have with Joe or with Kate or with Sana or with you. It's really the process that can be passed on. So that became huge for us. And then doing the same for other pieces in the business. We co-create content with clients. So we write LinkedIn content, we write articles for clients as well. And again, without a process, it's just not scalable. You can't hire people, and it's chaotic inside, and it's extremely time consuming. So those are some of the examples of where this has been instrumental to us.
Absolutely. Marina, you're such a great example of entrepreneur. It's just like you are definitely embodying it. So with your own personal brand, with your business, it's incredible. And I am so grateful that you came as a guest on the podcast and we were able to have that conversation. So now if our listeners want to get a hold of you, of any one of your brand specialists, know more about you, what is the best way to do that?
So number one, our website, which is very well structured and has a lot of information there too, including all of the pricing and all of the information. We believe in full transparency. There's no hiding of anything or any, special deals that people get. Everything's on the website. The name of the company is Brand of a Leader. And so the website is brandofaleader.com. If you're listening and you would like to schedule just a call to understand what personal branding is all about and ask questions, there's a button at the top. You click, you book, and we will take care of you. Or if you have any questions, you can email us and we will be delighted to answer as well.
That's fantastic. And they can also follow you on social media. We're going to put everything in the show notes because I think it's just fascinating, right? I mean, it is something that is so needed and so fundamental that every entrepreneur should have their own brand of who they are, because I think that it would just help them expand and scale and do and achieve what they want to do because they're focused. They have an idea now what they're looking for, who they are, and they are really going after their own personal mission, which I think is super important.
I think it's also, almost our obligation, Addie. When we've seen success as entrepreneurs, when we've learned a lot along the way, because we've learned a lot, right? It's not all rose and peachy and, rainbows and unicorns. Fall on our faces a lot. We'll learn a lot. And then we're not sharing that with others. We can pay it forward. We can inspire. We can be the face of what's possible as women, as men, as minority group representatives, as just, entrepreneurs building something. And then we're sitting on that wealth of information, and it's a disservice. I think that as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we do incredible things building businesses, and we build those circles of influence in the business and behind the business. But it is our obligation, I think, to pay it forward, to have a voice, and to impact so many more people than we already do.
I agree with you. I so agree with you. Thank you, Marina. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the data. It's been a pleasure having you on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.